Every time that I think I begin to understand and comprehend just how big Starfield is going to be, Todd Howard pops out of his hidey hole and gives us a new tidbit through an interview, or in this case, Tokyo Game Show, and reveals to us just a crumb of information that throws open the speculation floodgates and makes me completely reevaluate just how ambitious is Starfield really going to be? Todd Howard took to the stage at Tokyo Game Show and revealed to us that Starfield will feature over 150,000 lines of dialogue, which is more than twice as much what we saw in Skyrim, and about 40,000 more lines than what we saw in Fallout 4. And immediately, I know some of your minds went there, mine did too. Does this mean, is this confirmation of the return? Some people will dread it, some people might be excited for it. I'm interested to see where you fall on the spectrum. The return of the voiced protagonist. We're going to talk about that and why the answer is maybe. Starfield will also feature the largest cast of voice actors in any Bethesda game previously, with over 300 actors taking part in the game, which is monumental, especially for Bethesda games. Just to put it into perspective, that is almost twice as much voice actors as what we saw in Fallout 4 with all of the DLCs. It's just absolutely huge. Before we go any further, I wanted to take a step back and just really put this into perspective, really nail down how large this game is, and at least when it comes to the dialogue and the writing, by looking at some benchmarks of other games. First and foremost, you might be able to think of it already, Rockstar games. I feel like Rockstar always provides a pretty good benchmark for this sort of thing. It does have the open world elements, it does have the voice protagonist as well. One thing it doesn't have is the pure breadth of factions that we see in a Bethesda game. There's just so many avenues and groups that you can align with that have their own main storylines within the overarching main story, and every character can feel unique in that way. In the case of Grand Theft Auto 5, it featured 158,000 lines of dialogue. Mass Effect, when we talk about the voice protagonist, is always hopefully where a lot of people envision that Bethesda can go or grow with the game, had a surprisingly low amount of 40,000 lines of dialogue in Mass Effect 3. Divinity Original Sin 2, which is one of my favorite and what I consider to be one of the best RPGs of all time. Divinity Original Sin 2 featured 74,000 lines of dialogue, and that was a very dialogue heavy game, all things considered. Now, finally, if you remember, before Fallout 76 Wastelanders came out, which introduced NPCs to the game, Bethesda was already touting that it would have more voice lines than any previous Fallout game to date. Reddit user Starfield November provided this very useful graphic on the Starfield subreddit, where it showcased after all of the updates to Fallout 76, there was a total of 167,000 lines of dialogue in the game. This is post Wastelanders, and it had in the game the silent protagonist, which is probably the most important aspect about it. Now we get into the discussion, does this mean the return of the voice protagonist? Some of you will dread it, some of you will be really excited about it. I have to admit my own bias. I personally am not looking forward to that happening. I thought it was very limiting on being able to express exactly the character that you want to be. When you play as Nate in Fallout 4, every time that you play, it's going to be a different version of Nate. It's your version, but it's still Nate. The same goes for any game that is voice acted in the similar capacity. Mass Effect, you play your version of Shepard, it's always Shepard. The Witcher, you play your version of Geralt, it's always Geralt, so on and so forth. It's just the nature of having a voice acted protagonist. So what exactly is the argument for a voice protagonist? Well, for starters, you do have the increase in lines of dialogue, which might mean that yes, they are saving a lot of room for the narrator or the character to interact with NPCs. Fallout 4 had 13,000 lines specifically for the protagonists in the game, so possibly. Also, it's a speculation at this point, but it's a pretty safe assumption that Starfield will feature primarily just a male human and a female human protagonist in the game. So it's much more likely than in something like Elder Scrolls, where it would just be a monumental undertaking to get a male and female voice for orcs, Argonians, Bretons, High Elves, Dark Elves, and every other race in the game. It's simply impossible. On the contrary, why does this not confirm? And again, acknowledging and admitting my own bias here, but we do have the monumental amount of voice lines that we saw in Fallout 76, and that's just because it provided the much wider range of dialogue and topics that you can talk about with the NPCs, including the skill checks that would take conversations in different directions, right? In conjunction, there's a lot more exposition that will be needed to be handled in Starfield. We're not building upon a universe we already understand like Elder Scrolls or Fallout. This is a brand new world with brand new lore, and they'll have to provide exposition to the player, which of course will come in the form of terminals and books and notes that you find, but a large portion of it, I'm willing to bet, will be through interacting with the NPCs. Furthermore, you might see companions, which Bethesda has done a really great job of improving companions over the past couple games. We might see companions that really engage with the world and have something to say about everything and interact with other NPCs organically and naturally. So you take all these elements, you take the expanded options of things that you can talk about in the game, you take the exposition that needs to be done, you take expanded companions and other lines of dialogue, plus more quests to go on, more writing, more areas to explore, and it all adds to the fact that very likely we won't see that return of the protagonist. But if my speculation isn't enough, take it from Todd Howard. We do have the early quotes after Fallout 76 launch where he mentioned that some systems in Fallout 4 did not work. But in an interview with Telegraph, Todd Howard came out and said that this will be a bit more of a hardcore role-playing game than they've done. It has great character systems, choosing your background and things like that, but we're going back to some things we used to do in games long ago we felt have really let players express the character they want to be. What are those systems? Letting you choose your own voice, not having the voice determined for you, but being able to implant whatever voice, whether they're snarky, positive, a jokester, narcissistic, any way that you want to impose your voice on the character. It's not done through a protagonist that is doing it for you. And finally, to really put the nail in the coffin on this discussion, RPG elements does not just mean the combat or leveling up or the gear and the customization you can have with it. It also means the dialogue. RPG in a role-playing game is how you interact with the characters around you, what you do with them, how you talk to them, and what relationships you build. It's a huge part of the role-playing experience outside of battling and fighting things and customizing your look. And for me, the way I interpret these quotes means, yes, we'll be focusing more time on expanding the world and expanding the dialogue options and less time with trying to get a protagonist to be voice acted. So lastly, is this something to get excited about? 100% yes. If you weren't excited for Starfield, or you were losing excitement because there is a long wait before we'll get more information about the game, likely next year at E3, this hopefully will bring those hype levels back up, and I think reasonably so. Bethesda's commitment to providing that in-depth role-playing experience that they've been lacking in some of their previous entries is going to be a great return, and hopefully the resurgence that many of us fans, longtime fans, have been hoping to see. And this really helps push it in the right direction. So absolutely a reason to get excited. But I want to know what you guys have to say. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like on the video. And as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.